Hi, my name is Kathy Sheffers, and I'm with Goodheart-Willcox Publisher. I'm joined by my colleague, Katrina Pilo. We are so happy to be with the author team of Amy Lee, Margaret Delahanty Kelly, Catherine Lee, and Maggie Bergeron, who just published a brand new resource for first-year experience courses.
Approaching College with Purpose is focused on the importance of students beginning their educational journey with intention, developing good habits, and creating a strong mindset, and acquiring strategies to ensure a successful transition to college. Can you talk a little bit about what research studies help to inform the content of your book?
Yes, I could. Well, I could talk about particular studies, or I could talk more about areas of research. So I think I'll talk first about areas of research, which would be certainly the research that's in writing studies. And if people want to see even just a digest of that, you can go to the WPA.org, the Writing Program Administrators, or the NCTE, National Council of Teachers of English, 4Cs page. And those both of those organizations have very robust and succinct statements about kind of the state of the art of knowledge in the field of learning writing and teaching writing. And so certainly that research informs our book, and we have a lot in the book. All of us across all of our chapters have really incorporated writing. We used a lot of research, and a book I would point to for this one would be How Learning Works. But we looked at different research available on learning sciences and what we know today about how people learn. And that learning and development are interconnected and synergistic. And the book How Learning Works, I think, is a great resource for people who want to just kind of look at some of the top findings from learning sciences. With that is embedded in the context of higher education too, and it provides tools and resources, and it's a terrific book. We used a lot of the scholarship that I referred to earlier when we were talking about engaging diversity. So research on, I would call it critical intercultural competence and communication, and multicultural education, and sort of diversity equity research in higher education. And we incorporated it, and people will see this in the bibliography, that there's quantitative work that looks at sort of student experiences and how students identify what has been critical to their advancement of cognitive, intra, and interpersonal tools that facilitate equity and engaging diversity. And there's also theoretical and sort of educational philosophy scholarship that is represented in the book. There is, if I think about my own scholarship, has included multi-year projects with interviewing, surveying first-year students, looking at their work, talking to their instructors. So having sort of a big group of students, 400 students in a program over each year, who answer questions about critical components, critical elements, critical moments in their experience. And we have all that data. And then there were interviews and focus groups that we did over a couple of years with those same students. And certainly that and the research that I've published around first-year students and what is meaningful to them, what supports their growth and development, their sense of being valued and visible. Those studies that I have done certainly were a part of my thinking and approach to the book. Also, I would say my own background is in pedagogy, and particularly developing pedagogy in higher education. I think in higher education, a lot of us get trained and we're experts in our field of knowledge, but we don't get, this is still true for a lot of us today, we aren't required to take courses that help us think about teaching or facilitating learning in our area of knowledge. And so that is what I study and what I do. And so a lot of that sort of pedagogical higher education context is in the book as well.
The introduction to this book was written during the COVID-19 pandemic. How did that timing affect the introduction, and how do you think your content relates to today's students?
Yeah, the COVID-19 pandemic definitely, along with other events taking place, really affected the way that we continued to edit the book and as we wrote the introduction. And I think some of the main things that we kind of focused on was, I think it really made us kind of rethink or re-see the role of education in people's lives, and kind of when it's being brought into this new format, I think it really made us think about like personally, specifically, I guess it really made me and kind of the people around me think about like, why am I in college? What am I doing here? And kind of what am I getting from this? And not in a negative way, more so in a way of realizing that a new format kind of made us see it in a new light and made us think more about why am I taking the classes I'm taking and what am I hoping to get from this? And so I think that type of inquiry really affected as we wrote the introduction, thinking about the function of college for students, the extent to which we're connecting education to the world around us, and then also the ways in which these institutions are and are not serving students. And I think all of that kind of helped us to see education in new lights that affected how we wrote the introduction and also how we shaped the rest of the book as well.
I remember when we knew we needed to go back and take another pass through the whole book and then also the introduction. And one of the things, and I remember doing that last summer while the pandemic was still new and unfolding, and even thinking back 9 months ago seems like another world to where we are now. Certainly fewer deaths and fewer cases. And one of the things that I remember is realizing we don't need to change a lot of the book. The book really is written to take advantage of what is known about how people learn and develop, which means I think of this focus that we've been talking about on interactions, on the dynamic nature of human development and learning and fields of knowledge. They're always changing. And so I actually remember feeling comforted that there were opportunities where we could call attention to what was happening and translate it into, if you're in an online class now or in a blended class. And I think as we have gotten more experience with that, we could do that a little more in another edition of the book. But we did all feel like the book really spoke to what was happening now in a way that was useful and positive. And I certainly was thinking about that as I run a program that has 60 instructors in it that work with first year students, and observing, everything they were doing to stay connected to and committed to. I think this is true about so many people who choose to go into work with first year students, is what is at the center of everything they're thinking about and doing is their students, and making sure their students are okay, and compassion for their students, and wanting to be sure they're providing an environment that's healthy and supportive. And so just experiencing that with everybody that I have the privilege of supporting in my work also is something I could, that I thought a lot about as we were doing the book. And I feel like the book honors that commitment that first year teachers have in unexpected and upside down time like we've been living through this last year, and as things begin to get differently not upside down anymore, because I think none of us are going back to what was. We're going somewhere new. And that is a part of a reason why I think that new books are needed to help all of us get there. And I hope this one does.
Just building a little bit off of what Amy said, I think because it's a very student-centered book, and because students are always present, regardless of the modality of the course, that the changes weren't as necessary in terms of the actual book, because it is so student-centered. And that's the core of what education is the learner, and learner, both educator and student learner.
So this concludes our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank our authors again for their time today. If you have any additional questions or would like a sample of Approaching College with Purpose textbook and student journal, please contact your GW educational consultant. Thank you again.